last week on the SMITE Console League.
Happy Monday and welcome to the SMITE Console League.
Happy to be here, Finch, and happy to see some console action getting started on this Monday. OutCold have definitely been a heavy favorite so far in the PS4 Europe world, but VGSGods might be looking to take over. It is a new phase after all, Finch.
And we're about to find out, actually. Let's go ahead and move into those picks and bans for game number 1.
Though there's a reason why he wasn't involved in that siege, or rather that team fight, because he's looking for the mid-Phoenix potential. Kana getting the archers dead, couldn't get there in time.
Push it to the limit. All Be Mighty dives the Titan. Frenzy is popped. Ultimates abound. Game number 3 in the whole damn set goes to MV3.
Feeling really good after that last set, going from PlayStation EU now to the Xbox European side of things.
That's right, we're going to be taking a look at Dabo's Disciples, considered one of the top teams here in that Xbox EU scene, going up against Hive Central, another team with some names that you might be familiar with, but probably not quite, just based on past performance right there with Dabo.
Dabo's Disciples quickly dispatch Hive Central in roughly 45 minutes of total.
It's just a little bit too above, I think, Hive Central's capabilities for this one. But in all fairness, I really do think that this was Hive kind of drafting against themselves for this matchup.
But that does it for all of Europe, both PS4 and Xbox. We're going to switch over to the North American side of things on the other side.
Feeling pretty good. Already saw a little bit of that European action for the day, so really excited to see what North America has in store for us.
So they find a kill, but it's all too late. Titan goes down, and Big Money clean the set 2-1.
5-0-11 is this Erlongshan from Jelly, transitioning away from the Pele to a more CC jungler. You gotta love his performance today.
Look, Hype Unit has continually been the top card. Last split, they had Heat Uprise kind of challenge them a little bit, but this is the team to beat.
It's only week number 2 currently of like a long 13-week process.
Strap in, everybody. It's going to be a fun phase 2 if this first 2 weeks have been any indication. Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome in. It's time for the SMITE Console League. So thankful for you to be joining us. I'm Aggro, joined by the best Taco on the desk with a great orange sweater.
The best time to wear a striped sweater.
It's all the time.
It's all the time.
You already know that's right. Taco, we've got a great day of Console League action coming at you, and we're starting to see how these teams shake up. You just saw a little bit of a preview of what happened last week. And let's take a look at today's schedule. We're kicking it off with Arial Arise versus VGSGods. Do want to make a note that Hive Central has been DQ'd against Team Rival and Sanguine DQ'd up against Hype Unit. So those two teams, Rival and Hype Unit, on the receiving end of 2-0 victories due to the disqualification of their opponents. I believe both teams could not field the full roster. But to be honest, it's Hype Unit and Rival. We expected that would be how it would turn out anyways. Here's our current standings for the PS4 EU side of things. VGSGods sitting up at 2-0 and Arial Rise 0-2. We've got a top versus bottom seed situation here, Taco, and these are the ones that if you want to win this region, and if VGSGods want to best outcold the previous top dog here, you got to beat the bottom end.
You can't really afford to have those same sort of mistake slip-ups in the sets. I'm right there with you, Aggro. And VGSGods also, I think, with a prime opportunity to kind of expand their lead in the standings. Don't think that these matchups are all going to be a guarantee for some of these other teams.
No, certainly not. And you know OutCold's going to be hungry. They want to come back to LAN and try and qualify for the World Championship, so you know that these are the ones that you have to end up winning. You've already got a one-game lead. OutCold won their offline game, or off-stream game, I should say, up against their opponent, so they're at 2-1. Got to get to 3-0 here if you're VGSGods.
Probably anticipating some pressure picks in that case for VGSGods, in fact, trying to just dominate the early game, similar to how they handled their opposition in last week.
And we know they had the victory over MV3 last week, as we saw in that little video, so they're in the first pick position to start us off here today. We've seen a lot of changes as teams get used to the midseason patch and all the adjustments that came with it. What are some of the things that you're surprised we aren't seeing? Because for me, I'm surprised we've seen so little Nike and so little Scotty.
So little Scotty is the big one that catches my eye first and foremost, aggro. You would think that with a dog that autopilots for you, console would be all over that, but doesn't really seem to be the case here. King Arthur, though, and Set have definitely caught the eye of VGSGods, not looking to take any chances with those backline harassers.
Set is one of those gods that as soon as he was released and everyone was like, yeah, we're not quite sure how good he is, but you could tell the potential was there. Now teams are starting to realize the potential. Players, having played him for a decent amount of time now, are starting to realize that potential, and he's getting banned accordingly because, man, that god is really scary.
Same goes for Jormungandr on the other hand. VGSGods, I think, just taking heavy priority against Arya's solo laner potentially. Sen a little bit jungle-oriented as well, but has definitely risen in terms of attention towards that solo aspect. And with Thor still being on the board, VGSGods are going to waste no time whatsoever. A nice flex pick, if I might add.
That's true. We have seen it in places like the solo lane. I wouldn't be surprised to see it in support from time to time moving forward. Thor, definitely a flexible kit. Speaking of those mid-season changes, he obviously on the receiving end of a lot of those. Zhong didn't receive any changes, but still feels like one of those top picks. He's been all over the place.
And this isn't really a giveaway either from Arial Arise, which is something I'm a big fan of. They are also kind of sticking with this flexibility pattern. The Zhong could be intended for the Hunter role, could be for mid or even solo lane. And Muzen, while we haven't seen a solo lane B in quite some time, I wouldn't necessarily throw it entirely out of the realm of possibility here, but that Terra could be enough of a deterrence factor here to want to put that AMC into the mid lane, simply because of the fact that that CC potential could be devastating against the Muzen.
But even against the Zhong as well, can't get out of that route, can certainly have some problems there, and so Arial Arise drafted the Khepri to try and help out those carries from that constant CC that they're going to be facing. VGSGods certainly watch the patch notes, so for mid-season, the mid-season changes, Thor and Nike, two of their top 3 picks.
And normally I'd be a little bit higher up on this Khepri pick, but I think one of the main concerns I have right now for Arial Arise is that they don't have a ton of lockdown potential for their damage dealers to really prosper right now. Khepri kind of struggles with that initiation factor, considering that he's intended typically to try and protect that backline, try and stay focused on one of the carries, if not both, to see who's going to need that Scare's Blessing first. But there's just so much dive potential already between Thor, Terra, Nike. It's going to be tough for this Khepri to even know which of his carries is going to be the intended target.
It's a great point. And Nike, I think one of the big parts of her kit these days is now that you don't have to worry about that plan of action and boosting up your abilities, that huge 50% health shield and the massive AoE slow, I think not being able to get away from that slow from the Nike ult could really hurt Arial Arise's carries as Raijin gets locked in, even more slows now for this composition. And Chernobog is just one more, but also a global presence with that ultimate.
I really like the idea of Living Nightmare being able to follow up into that taiko drums, and just having the taiko drums in general to better control the Muzen or the Zhong. A lot of Arial Arise kind of depending on getting up close and personal with their composition in order to prosper, and it's going to be tough aggro to fill that gap.
VGSGods looking to extend their lead in the PS4 EU League. Let's throw it over to the casters for Game 1.
And into Game 1 we go. It's Finch and Anatoly here to bring you the action. Thank you, Aggro and Taco, on the desk. And I like it. A cheeky little Chang'e came in for Arial Arise towards the tail end of their draft. Meanwhile, the Zhong in the long lane under some early pressure.
We've been seeing the Chang'e, Finch, in the SPL last week. Team rival solo laner FineOK bringing it back into fruition. Benji as well from E United was very comfortable on this goddess. It provides great team fighting presence, and all of Arial Arises, I think, is really focusing on this AoE team fighting outside of really Ollie on the Muzen, which is a little bit more single target, whereas VGS focusing on a lot of just CC long range setup between this Thor Terra combination. You got Raijin, taiko drums from a distance.
Yeah, we've actually got two really good team fights, I would say, between the two drafts that these two have. And that's why I think this Chang'e and the 10th pick in particular was so good, because it does give less opportunity for VGSGods to try and counter it. Now, fortunately, I think their comp's pretty good at applying anti-heal, especially Raijin, with that Raiju kind of bouncing through the fight. So they won't be in too bad of a spot, but Arial Arise using that 10th pick well, I think, to get Kana sustained God to maybe slightly give them an edge in these team fights.
And outside of ClawLegend for the Divine Ruin, Tier Toxic being such a nuisance in the melee stance, I think can easily pick up the Pestilence whenever they want. Maybe even could go for Contagion.
SARPEII already taken a bunch of damage, and Drizzle wants to keep the chase going, but he won't be able to. Looks like the Khepri nearby might be enough to deter him, but instead, SARPEII's kind of let him on a chase. There's the Abduct, but beads come out so he can keep looking for it. Hammer allows him to reposition, but they did at least get the shell too.
Smart play from Drizzle to not invest the hammer until he realized, like, okay, it's time to disengage. SARPEII, I felt, for some reason, was baiting by constantly turning around and using that backwards movement as a slow deterrence. I like what Toxic was trying to do there by using that shield to put him under the tower. Just didn't have the distance.
But it can be a pretty nice turnaround potential for the Nikes in that long range if they can find it. Tier Toxic going into the Chang'e matchup can be tough at times. We've seen them take these meditations. There it is, actually, the push you were just mentioning. There's a ton of free damage from Toxic, but they take the meditation over here in lane. Hopefully they don't ever have to back. They have the blue buff for mana sustain too and use Chang'e passive to buy items, but now a rotation might be trouble.
And that first tower shot was only 152 damage. If the second one came through, it would have been close to 200. Kana should be fine under their own tier 1 tower, even using that immunity to avoid unnecessary damage. But with this rotation, you might as well get something out of nothing. No Totem of Coups quite yet, but the first one 3 minutes in will go to VGS.
So Arial will invade the red buff in response. Drizzle gets here to try and defend, but won't make it in time. OIIy is getting a little bit of backup to make it out of here as Drizzle decides not to stick around in the fates of a Khepri, and in the end, everyone falls.
Whenever you're invading, you gotta hold your hands, and the Khepri support was about to leave until he realized, like, oh, wait a second, my mid-hunter is actually wanting to box, and they need to box and keep the store a little bit in check. When you can fight a Thor on your own terms, that's gonna stop him from really using that global pressure whenever he wants to and delays his farming. Like, even that 2 to 3 second little exchange on the red buff, now he's not rotating on the right buff. Your soul laner is safe. You don't have to worry about your own buffs getting invaded. Good things are starting to happen from Arial.
I think so too. But when these ultimates come online for VGSGods, you might see a slight change in the pace of this game. They've got those 2 global, semi-globals for Thor that can really turn things around between him and the Chernobog for Marky Sparky. Once they have those ultimates, I'm interested to see if they maybe look to try and punish Kana on this Chang'e, or maybe even look for OIIy in the mid lane.
Very possible, but Kana can easily itemize into physical defense against all 3 of those gods, whether it's the Nike, the Thor, or even the Chernobog. So I don't really have too much concerns for the Chang'e. Even without physical defense, Chang'e can survive so easily between the immunity frames, the turnaround potential with a Waxing Moon ultimate. If all 3 of them are there, somebody's going to get stunned for 3 seconds, Finch.
It's hard to lock down a Chang'e. It certainly is part of why she can feel so strong over there in the short lane, where we've seen a lot of different stuff going really across the map. It's so open right now. And for what it's worth, console hadn't come entirely on board just yet, I hadn't felt like, but now we're seeing it. Distortion playing the Zhong, the Chang'e over there as well. It is starting to look like more and more that SPL strata put something you really want with a ton of farm in the long lane, and everything's opened up. It started to trickle down.
And Distortion is a natural hunter player, or rather natural long lane player. A lot of recent switches in terms of roles being swapped to try to follow into this mage meta in the long lane, but Distortion comfortable enough to be able to still play the Zhong, but to be fair, Zhong kind of plays itself.
It does sometimes feel like it's hard to mess up Zhong in lane. But I haven't had a chance to ask you yet, how do you feel about just the role swap in general? It's one thing to put, you know, a mage in the long lane, have your hunter play it, but do you think you should be putting your mid player over there too?
I mean, it could work. Only if you're against somebody that's either playing a very passive god or their natural playstyle is passive.
Right.
When we saw the matchup of Zeros versus Arkle, I don't think Zeros had a good time on the Thoth that first game. But to be fair, he ended that game at 7-1, so his only death was that very first kill. But against an aggressive player such as Arkle, you're not really prepared for it.
Marky Sparky in some trouble. He does make it up into the air after we come back out from the pause, but he's either going to go land right back there or land with an enemy, as Khan is now in some trouble too, so Marky does land back in place. That means First Blood goes to Distortion, but now Khan is in trouble. It's the Thor making his way over along with Terra for another kill.
I'm actually surprised that Marky Sparky doesn't invest his ultimate to travel to the solo lane where he has 3 allies already focusing out the Chang'e, but instead now Arial Arise going to try to get their first objective 6 minutes in.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty good exchange for Arial Arise if you ask me. They don't steal the red buff, but they find that kill into Marky Sparky thanks to Distortion, and they're able to get the Gold Fury despite losing Kana. That seems like a pretty good 30 seconds to me.
Absolutely is, and the key note is getting that Gold Fury was the zoning of ClawLegend with red buff, with Taiko drums. Very easy to maybe not necessarily steal the Gold Fury, but to use the ultimate to push them away from the aggro range to reset it.
But Stunning ended up having to try and fight off with SARPEII around that red buff. For what it's worth, looks like he did defend, but you know, as you said, no Gold Fury stripped away on the back end of that. So we did see at least Drizzle's ultimate used for some aggression, but kind of to your point, it took them a while to bring Kana down, even in a 3v1 where no one else rotated, so he'll certainly be able to buy plenty of time with it.
By ignoring the teleport at level 1, it becomes a little more difficult to lock down a Chang'e that has meditation. Extra mana, so even when she's out of mana, she never really is.
Right.
It's kind of a baiting and a trap and a switch. Also having Lotus Crown to get extra protections now from the healing. That extra 20 protection is going to go a long way in this early game before Thor even has any penetration available.
And it's forced your Toxic to build some early magical defense. It looks like might even be a Pestilence to try and get some anti-heal on board early on, as ClawLegend has to use beads to get away from the action in middle lane. That could mean that Kana and SARPEII actually have some turnaround potential against tier Toxic, though Sentinel Azu's still good, as the Thor dunk way in the back, as is the wall. And Drizzle looks like he wants to move on, so do I, as SARPEII's ultimate and the ultimate from ClawLegend.
I was about to say maybe he used his Thunder Crush away, but he just used it now under that tier 1 tower. Blink wasn't available for about 7 to 8 seconds, so it wasn't like an accidental, oh, I got an aggro of an archer, and then I tried to blink ultimate. That was just way off the mark there, Finch.
Yeah, just a really interesting exchange from multiple players across the map there, but everyone makes it out of it A-okay. It's really just the beads of ClawLegend that are missing, as Drizzle is able to worm his way back towards the tier 1 tower. In comes Marky Sparky to deter any aggression, but a nice 2-man route there from Pulsza shuts that down.
This Khepri support is really making a name for himself to be able to help his teammates to prevent the aggression from VGS. They're trying to use this global pressure, but unsuccessful was Drizzle in the right, unsuccessful was Marky Sparky in mid, and thus far, when you're not getting anything from your globals this early game, the late game power from Arial should be a big factor.
I think so too. They've got a really good chance in this late game of looking strong. To be fair, I mean, both these team comps are pretty difficult to deal with. I mean, they both have really good Guardians if I'm trying to control a late game team fight, I feel like, with Pulsza on the Khepri for the Scarab's Blessing. But then you also got Terra, whose own ultimate is 250 words long and does so much. I mean, these are both really strong drafts. Once they start grouping up, as long as no one has a huge advantage, it should be really back and forth.
It should be back and forth, but I still think that the longer the team fights last, the more favorable it'll be for Arial, knowing that they do have the sustain from Kana. Kana also having a heal plus an anti-heal built into the kit, so
like it.
Less anti-healing items required for Arial as opposed to VGSGods rather, that might hurt their DPS numbers.
I'm curious. I didn't see how Drizzle went along this build path. Did he stop in the middle of building the pen to get the tier 1?
Yes.
It looks like, and now he is back, so we'll get a chance to see if he wants to finish off, and it is the Brawler's Beastic that he goes into. Perhaps he had a back timing where he had enough for the tier 1, but not enough for Brawlers?
Possibly. Even like the tier 1 Morningstar gives a little bit of MP5, the extra power. Not a terrible investment for 550 gold.
Yeah, not too bad, I agree. If maybe he had forced into an awkward back somewhere along the lines, forced out, and had to try and make the best of it. So Perhaps that's what he was looking for, is now the Brawlers is finished, along with that Pestilence from Tier Toxic. That does give them a good deal of anti-heal if they were to fight Kana, as Fear No Evil dropped from SARPEII, but doesn't get there in time. ClawLegend's beads were back.
Well, it's looking like a little bit more action in mid as Drizzle wants blood, using that Anvil of Dawn, landing right on top of Ollie, forced to use the beats.
And the Stinger in response, but it's nowhere near enough. Drizzle finds another kill for VGSGods, is checking on the red buff, but that's not there. So instead, they'll look for Pulsza underneath the Tier 1, but E has the Scarab's Blessing for himself. One of those charges wasted, but the hammer's enough. Drizzle gets the killing spree.
Even investing the teleporter, the Waxing Moon connects onto one. ClawLegend receiving the shell just in the nick of time, right out of Hacky.
And now Tier Toxic makes the rotation a little bit behind Kana, but gets here just in time all the same. And that's a fight that's a win for VGSGods, so a nice answer back to Arial, who I think probably had control.
Good confidence booster from Drizzle after completely whiffing in the solo lane, connecting right at the target that he needed to, even having the presence of mind to realize and sense that there was still more to the play developing by positioning himself behind that Tier 2 tower.
He was ready for the follow-up, and that was critical, or else Pulsza would have likely made it out. I think ClawLegend's third fire of the ultimate got there while the res was still happening, so I don't think he would have had enough damage were it not from that positioning from Drizzle. So yeah, a good sequence from him, and now it looks like he's onto the Tier 2 of Hydras from what I'm seeing, so he should be pretty strong in just a few minutes.
10% cooldown reduction, never a bad thing for a Thor player with such short cooldowns already into his kit. Extra damage from those basic attacks. SARPEII trying to abuse ClawLegend without the beats.
That was much better timed this time from SARPEII, and ClawLegend doesn't have any options when no one's around and he doesn't have beads. An easy cleanup kill for the Hun bots. And now they can start moving towards this Primal Fury. It's a bait. Hacking, trying to come in to check, and does indeed get baited up, ducked. And now it's Drizzle's own wall that causes a problem. Hacky ends up falling up into the air, goes to Thor, but I can't imagine what's to dunk down to 5.
No, definitely not. SARPEII was probably the target there, but he jukes back into the left side mid camps. Once the Hunbats used the jump, I think that's why Drizzle wanted to land on the Hunbats.
Well, he's way in the back line of the fight here now to try and stop this Primal Fury, but Arial Arise, they recognize where he is. They send SARPEII to zone him away, but Tier Toxic, in he comes, forces them to drop the Primal Fury. Now that baits out the ultimate there from Kana in response. Sentinel of Zeus gives a ton of HP, but it's not going to be enough. There's so much that's pouring in, and even still Tier Toxic makes it out. And now it's ClawLegend that's pushing back the rest of Arial Arise with an ultimate of his own.
Pulsza going to use that Scarab's Blessing right on top of Kana just for good safety measures. Pulsza not done yet, even going to put himself a little bit out of position. Nobody beside him to really bail him out if he gets in trouble. And the key factor there was the great presence of Drizzle and Tier Toxic to reset that Primal Fury. But then, Kana doing a one-player ultimate for Waxing Moon. Normally you want to hit at least 2 if you can. Save it for those corridor fights, because those team fights will naturally somehow always develop into a corridor.
Yeah, especially if it's onto Tier Toxic. I can be persuaded to use it on 1 for kill confirm, but it's got to be someone you can kill, right? The Nike is the hardest person on the map for them to kill at this point, so it does seem a bit odd as now Arial Arise return to the Primal Fury. Kana's ultimate, to be fair, will be back up soon. Genji's and cooldown boots give him quite a bit of help in that department. There's the Fear No Evil from SARPEII to catch out too, and it's Hacky they pull into the abduct. Respond to his own. Arial Arise do find the Fury, but Marky, Sparky, and Drizzle show up suddenly for a double.
But they need a little bit more than that, Finch. Pulsza going to be the third target for Drizzle. They're still going to chase out Kana. Kana no longer with the Waxing Moon. Tier Toxic doing a great job pushing Ollie between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, that's filthy like a Wendy's dumpster. That's so nice that Tier Toxic was able to find the shield to push Ollie back. And if you're in a Muzen Cobb, you have, count them, no options to get away from that. There's no movement abilities.
That's right. You can only go south, and there's going to be ClawLegend waiting for you to, as you're avoiding that plan of action. But you're giving up the objective on the left. Finch, VGSGods with their eyes on the prize, a 15-minute Fire Giant.
And yet again, Kana's ultimate's down. That's probably his best steal potential here on the actual Fire Giant. But he is level 14 and relatively tanky as Hacky dies to the FG. They go into the Taiko drums, using it for confirm. VGSGods get the objective, but Kana finds one more kill. That's 2 who have fallen. Drizzle does make it to the hammer in time, and SARPEII can't keep up the chase. So at least 3 live with FG.
Not a bad trade, I would say, for VGSGods. I don't think they're going to be able to get really tier 2 towers off of this, but they should be able to control jungle teamfights if it were to develop. And at this stage of the game, when you're dealing with Kana and the sustain, you want to be taking the fights now and try to shut her down. Don't let her get comfortably to that level 20 marker.
Agreed, but what a hectic first 15.5 minutes we've had to this game. So that these teams are willing to kind of throw caution to the wind at times and try and make plays, and so far, it's only led to 12 kills, but it has been an action-packed 12 kills.
It definitely has. There's also been some kills that have been slightly gotten away in the meantime. A good little upswing for VGSGods after that last exchange. I'm expecting them to at least be able to get this tier 1 middle tower, since Arial Arise a little bit split across the map, Distortion all the way on the left side of the map. If VGSGods can get a pick, I feel comfortable that they can grab the tier 2. Otherwise, Arial should be able to hold this next one.
Tier 1 in mid is down, the tier 1 in right has fallen as well. Drizzle goes in for damage on the Pulsza, but that's a 3-man ultimate from SARPEII, force out beats from ClawLegend, and ends up costing sparky his life. But in comes Drizzle to respond in kind, and SARPEII can't handle the damage Thor chunks.
Distortion blinking in, Drizzle not having the hammer for a little bit longer, but he's actually going to turn around, waxing one of the backside, Distortion bringing in the pain.
And that's nice for them to take down Drizzle, but that is Kana's ultimate used on a target I have to imagine was likely already dead. Tier Toxic is able to stay alive, and as you theorize, the tier 2 tower does not get threatened. That's just about it for the FG at this point. It's only on Tier Toxic.
SARPEII starting things off just right by just being there. He didn't even have to blink, jump in, use the monkey bounce. He just straight up walked from the right side jungle and forced a team fight outside of the tower. Could have been a little bit better, maybe if they baited VGSGods inside the tower and then you cut off the escape. We have the Fear No Evil, but still at the end of the day, you keep your tower alive. You get a 2-for-1 trade. Arial Arise still doing a good job holding the Fire Giant, which is now only remaining on the solo laner.
Very strong from SARPEII to turn that fight around for Arial. And now we slow things down a little bit. It is worth noting we have a couple of leads. Drizzle about 2 levels out in front of SARPEII, but Ollie in response is about 1.5 levels ahead of ClawLegend. For the most part, everyone else pretty close at this point here in the game. And you can just tell, look at the charts. Barely 700 gold down as Arial Arise here at this point, 1,000 experience. This match is still perfectly even.
When there's a 2-level disparity in the jungle, I always look at what gods both of these players are piloting, and when I see a Hun Batz behind by 2 levels, I'm not too worried, honestly. They're still going to be able to control teamfights very effectively, having 30% cooldown reduction, going to go for 40 once he finishes off that 4th item, and that's going to be still A-okay for SARPEII, even with a 2-level deficit.
I think you are right, and it's not as if they're going to be lacking much for damage presence either, especially with the Chang'e that they've added into the short lane, a Zhong and a Muzen comb. As long as those ultimate hits are like the ones we saw by that tower before the tier 2 siege, then SARPEII shouldn't have too much to worry about. It's just a question of how do they then turn that into their own win condition. It's been so close this game, even around objectives. Both teams have been able to hang right in there.
Drizzle gonna get caught and focused out a little bit. SARPEII with a beautiful ultimate, cutting everyone else out.
But he looks for the jump in for the slow. Does get the ultimate from Pulsza to keep him standing, and it's VGSGods on the back foot. Distortion just flat out wants the kill, diving the tier 2 to force out the Aegis from ClawLegend. But now he's in between the tier 1. Actually gets the kill on the ClawLegend, but will end up getting cleaned up on the back end. It's 2-for-1 in favor of Arial so far.
I think they can get another one onto tier Toxic if they could find a way to really control him between slowing and the root, but the rest of his teammates now grouping up tier Toxic without that Sentinel of Zeus, baiting himself out a little bit too long there with no jump. He could get in trouble now.
Yeah, no way I'd do that unless I'm 100% sure what the Abduct cooldown is, but apparently tier Toxic was. He gets away. Abduct does not find Sparky on left-hand side, so everyone survives, at least from those who were still remaining. And now it's Gold Fury on the menu yet again.
Distortion doing a good job that last team fight, forcing out the Aegis, still getting a kill, keeping 3 members preoccupied while the rest of his teammates were able to do a lot of work. Now tier Toxic, too far forward, my guy.
And this time he does get hit by the Abduct and the Fear No Evil. Drizzle, though, still going in. Anvil of Dawn stuns Kana, teleports to the hammer to get away, but he is no longer with any movement options. Instead, Arial head back to the Gold Fury yet again.
As they should, honestly, now without Tier Toxic. A 5-on-4 power play for Arial Arise, 25 seconds remaining. Poking his head where it's unbelonged. Hacky gonna get stunned out mid-dash.
Pulsza misses the abduct despite it being on the rooted target. He's got to retreat now at this point. SARPEII is low on the right-hand side too, as Drizzle has to drop his Aegis. But if you're VGSGods, you've stopped them from doing the Gold Fury. You don't feel too bad about this.
But for how long until Arial Arise started yet again? Kana gonna sustain himself up, and Pulsza a little bit further. The shield from Khepri passive gonna be continuously ticking. Gonna reset for the moment as Tier Toxic has revived. No longer is Arial with that 5-on-4 power play.
ClawLegend is probably the one the most happy that finished. He needed that farm. He just ticked over to level 15, was the same level as the supports. And that is one thing that helps. When you're the team that's ahead, you can force those fights around the objectives. It does mean someone's not farming, and it can kind of hurt someone who's behind.
But you could say they're ahead, but I mean, I'm not really seeing too much of an issue. The
Sure.
2-level advantage that OIIy has over ClawLegend is not too bad, especially when you're in a Muzen cob in the late game, doing quite a bit of basic attack damage as Distortion, looking for poke on the side. And comparatively, Hacky's sustain doesn't really match that of Kana's. So I think that Arial Arise should continue to force this Gold Fury.
Looks like that's going to be the call from Arial. Or at least take a fight before they move to it. Fear No Evil is used on ClawLegend, but it's Hacky the one they've been able to isolate. He gets both of those dashes off and the wall stun, buys a little bit more time. The wall lets him move out, but Kana just barely catches up with a little bit of that extra movement speed. And now it's Tier Toxic pulled back in, but Drizzle is waiting to dunk onto the back line. Distortion finds ClawLegend, so this is still all Arial.
Still looking for the tower dive under the Tier 1 tower. Distortion lands the card, forces out the Aegis, but we saw that story before, Finch. He got it once, he'll get it again.
Marky Sparky drops, and still Arial haven't lost anyone. Tier Toxic drops as well, and suddenly it's just Drizzle. He can't find even one. Deicide and Arial Arise stay healthy. They can move right on over towards the FG.
Finch, I knew that the Chang'e sustain would be good, but I didn't think it would be this good where no one died at all in that last little team fight. And a nice little juicy fire giant just for their efforts.
They should be able to get this one without any casualties. Pulsza did have to back. He was the one that was the most low, but the rest of these 4 players balance it perfectly. Fire Giant, the first one of the game for Arial Arise. And now they've got our first real lead, about 4,000 gold. And there's still every tower except mid tower to go get to expand that lead out even further.
How do you think Pulsza feels, or like a general support feels, where it's like, wait, I can help, I want to be here at the Fire Giant. It's like, no, Pulsza, go heal, we got this, we don't need you.
They send him back to go heal and rest up, but he wants to be on the front line. Well, Pulsza can join them now. He's starting to work on a Pride win of his own. This item could feel a little bit tough to build sometimes because the Tier 1's just CDR, but on Guardians, maybe don't mind too much. A little bit of extra CDR can always help.
I believe Callus did this on the Khepri during the SPL one of these weeks. And
oh, you think it's Myrmidon?
Oh, that's right. He did do the Myrmidon.
He
did do the Myrmidon. So I'm not really sure what's the direction he's going to go. But Hacky finishing off the Pride-win, I think, is a good look for him to be able to get close into the action. He needs to be able to slow targets with already a root and a stun. An extra slow wouldn't definitely hurt. But yeah, Staff of Myrmidon would be really good for Pulsza to be able to get off those double roots, double dashes.
That's right. I think we only saw Callus really get a double dash for the escape. They were already winning at that point, but perhaps we'll see Pulsza put it to some good use here as they now threaten the Tier 2 on the left-hand side. It looks as if SARPEII is split up in the Tier 2 in mid, but he's elected to fall back from that, and no defense from VGSGods on this Tier 2 in the long lane, so that one is down. At this point, down, what, nearly 8,000 gold, can they afford to defend on one of the Tier 2s?
I'm not entirely sure. It's going to be... The only way they can really do it is if they get insane long-range poke without receiving any on their own front. Drizzle with the stun hammer, ClawLegend with the Ryko drums as well. Not going to engage quite yet, but up in the sky is Drizzle.
He's looking for a target of his own, but at this point, Ariel's already fallen back, so now he's a bit forced. He does stun Distortion, but great patience from him to hold onto the beads. And remember, Distortion has Blink as that second relic, so he doesn't have any extra safety. It's all aggression as the Tier 2 comes down.
the discipline, Finch, from Arial to disengage from the tier 2 tower. They recognized where Drizzle was, what he was doing, and instantly react, as they should, and not even going to go for the Phoenixes. They're just going to get every single tower. Still 2,000 gold on this right side waiting for them.
And really, there's not much VGSGods can do. They tried to play around Drizzle's ultimate and see if maybe they could get some of that long-range poke off his setup. But as you said, Arial Arise played it so patiently. And now VGSGods have to watch as basically the entire map comes down around them. Now an 11,000 gold lead experience there to match. Going to be tough for VGSGods to fight into it.
A good power spike out of Marky Sparky as he just completes the Deathbringer. With Failnon already, that crit is going to be going a long way. Distortion going to definitely be blinking in, and he's not super tanky, really. He has a lot of health in his build, and he's going to be stealing it with the E-Staff, but without physical protections, Marky Sparky's lack of penetration outside the Executioner should still really melt through the Zhong regardless.
It's a good point. He just picked up a Spirit Robe, which actually should help a good deal.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if he ends up getting hit by some of that control that's coming out from VGSGods. But for the most part, you're right. I think this crit is facing few barriers to entry from this entire Arial Arise composition. These 2 upgraded shells, though, might pose a problem.
It definitely should, but I'd rather be dealing with upgraded shells than
Thorns,
Thorns
yeah.
and also hiding a me in line. I think a lot of players have forgotten how good those items and relics really are against the Failnon Deathbringer combination, but still, I think Distortion looking for something spicy.
They certainly are. SARPEII hasn't been able to pull the trigger just yet, but it's Marky Sparky low. He does make it up to the air, but, I mean, where's it going to come down? Just right back down in place. Meanwhile, Drizzle goes to the stun on Distortion. He makes it back to his own hammer, and it's Hacky who gets abducted back in. And another single target stun out from Kana. Hacky still survives at this point, too. I don't know. I think Arial Arise has kind of fumbled a nice opportunity there in the middle lane. And now Tier Toxics and Lazeus buys him some much-needed time to escape.
Oh no,
wow.
SARPEII with the monkey bounces. Finally, after about 30 seconds of late-game action, will get the pick. Distortion blinking in as well, popping the ultimate, getting everybody scattered like roaches.
Worked so far to create some space, but Arial Arise are picking neither option. Now they turn back towards the mid-Phoenix, and they burn that one down. So that Fire Giant push, it wasn't there for that actual Phoenix Siege, but off of the Fire Giant, they got every tower on the map except the mid-tier 1, and now the Phoenix. That's huge.
Oh, it absolutely is, Finch. This is a great play from Arial Arise. They came into this set, the underdog, without a single win in the set category, whereas VGSGods not only are undefeated in the set-wise, but also wins. They have yet to lose a single game.
I still do think that fight from them in mid could have been way better. I think there was end potential, honestly, with the way VGSGods kind of put themselves way forward out of position in that middle lane, but in a world where you don't get the best outcome, as long as you still get a good one, you won't complain too much. They grab mid-Phoenix, come back to the FG, now they have that for another push. Clearly, they're still way in control.
The later the game goes, the more important Vision becomes. And I don't think VGSGods had the intel of Vision around the left side, around the right side, the way they should have. Arial Arise took full advantage of that by really pincering them on both sides as Distortion came from the left. Every one of his teammates came from the right. I don't think VGSGods were prepared for that kind of a tactic.
No, it did not seem they were, but they managed to, for the most part, get their way out of there as Drizzle quite far forward and being hunted. Look at all these extra movement speed, and now the slows coming through too. There's the hammer back up though, so Drizzle should be a-okay to be set up for this defense. But it's much harder now. They got to worry about this mid wave of fire minions too.
It's going to be an issue, but at least Arial Arise doesn't have the enhanced Fire Giant quite yet, so they're still going to bide their time, grabbing a Fury in between. Not the only Fury for the extra minions, but if this push goes south, that Primal Fury becomes a lot easier to confirm the next respawning Fire Giant, which will be the enhanced version.
SARPEII pushed up the mid wave. Meanwhile, the rest of the team is here in the long lane. VGSGods, who are they looking to really make this defense work?
VGSGods need to find control onto multiple targets. It can't be only one because it's so easy to heal them back up from Kana. On the Chang'e, the Lotus Crown protections becomes really obnoxious. The shell upgraded from both him and Pulsza. but it's actually going to be a lot of space created. Tier Toxic going to jump in.
And now he's been abducted and pulled right back. There's the two-man Waxy Moon we're asking for, but Tier Toxic Sentinel Azu's shield mixed with Pride is so potent at this point. I don't know how you kill him. Even inside all the damage from Distortion, he still lives. SARPEII can't find the overhand smash. He jumps over it, but finally Distortion is able to grab him. That is the Taiko drums down from ClawLegend, forcing out SARPEII. But look at this left Phoenix. It's still standing at half HP.
But Hacky not going to stand for much longer. He has nowhere to go. A 5-on-3 now. Distortion trying to survive for a little bit longer. Left side Phoenix on its last leg, says Drizzle gets Kana.
That's a nice pickup to finally take down all that healing as Ollie makes his way back in. He forced out ClawLegend, gets a double kill on the Marky Sparky, and now it's 4 up against 1.
But this is actually very low targets. Without Kana for the sustain, ClawLegend could easily defend this if he gets the right AoE going.
But now he's been rooted and abducted. Those beads were key to keep him alive. ClawLegend, the path exists before you, but SARPEII, Fear No Evil's him back into the fountain, head back towards the actual Titan, and find the win. 31 minutes, and it's Arial Arise on top.
Even though VGSGods got the first Fire Giant, it doesn't really matter because they weren't able to do anything with it. During that Tier 2 tower siege, the defense was just very successful. SARPEII on the Hunbats controlled a lot of space with the Fear No Evil. VGSGods couldn't really push forward, and after that, the second, third Fire Giant is what really helped Arial seal the deal.
I agree. I really, again, love that 10th pick of the Chang'e as well for Kana. I mean, it was into a composition that didn't explicitly build to shut her down, so it could be hard to stop him in those kind of situations, and it's Arial Arise to come out on top. But that's only game 1. Still a chance for VGSGods to bounce back. Let's find out after the break.
OIIy, powering the control room for the SMITE Console League.
A huge upset in Game 1. Arial Arise end up taking Game 1 from VGSGods. Joining us here on the desk, it's Aggro and Taco. Taco, I mean, we were saying this is a huge set for VGSGods. You're sitting at 2-0. You've got a game in hand against Out Cold. You just got to win this set. And in Game 1, they just couldn't do it.
Arial Arise just came through hot, and I think the main issue that VGS tended to encounter throughout the entirety of that match was just no cohesion really in their team fight. They were constantly just having multiple target focuses, just made things a little bit too complicated to try and seal the deal here in Game 1 against Arial.
I think Arial Arise had too much AoE damage in that game. I mean, you've got Batz, Chang'e, AMC, Zhong, that's so much ground that your abilities are covering, and it just felt like VGSGods couldn't keep up with that. They had a much more single target DPS sort of composition, and as you mentioned, if their target selection isn't perfect, it's going to be a lot harder to execute.
And the Khepri was, I think, a big shutdown factor as well for some of those kills that might have otherwise gone VGSGods' favor to give them a little bit of an objective play edge. Unfortunately, just never really came to fruition.
Well, let's see if they're able to make some adjustments here as we get ready for picks and bans in game number 2. Still going to be first pick this time around. I think the Zhong is one that you look to ban away. I mean, clearly the Chernobog had a little bit of trouble up against that in lane, with a solo kill for the Zhong. I feel like that's a god right now in Zhong that you kind of have to respect a little bit more than what VGSGods did.
And it's tough as well, because for the Chernobog, if you want that intention of the global factor, you need to make sure that that is, at the very least, a stalemate in lane. So for that to have gone so poorly for the Chern throughout the duration of that laning phase, it was kind of only a matter of time, a little bit of foreshadowing even as to what Chernobog's impact would be like in the actual team fight situation. But I'm a big fan right now of what Arial Arise are sticking to. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And they had no issues whatsoever with the Ullr Chronos focus early on, so I'd imagine this to be an ISIS to follow up.
Could be. Zhong is banned away this time by VGSGods, so they do make the adjustment on that selection. I do think that VGSGods also need to tighten up. I mean, really, both teams, frankly, need to tighten up the objective play. So, some screwy Fire Giants and Gold Furies there that got a little bit weird. For both sides, really.
Yes, it felt like neither side was really all in committed. It looked more like a miscommunications problem amongst both teams, where it just seemed like there was multiple shot calls maybe happening at the same exact time. But this Thor could possibly be that assistance factor that Arial Arise need to try and clean up that objective play. Maybe having that perched view from the Anvil of Dawn could help out in terms of figuring out positioning and areas to attack.
So instead of the Zhong AMC, they go with Thor AMC for Arial Arise. VGSGods switched out their Jormungandr ban and end up taking the Jorm themselves. And the Guan Yu gets locked in right away. This has got to be a selection. I think this makes sense in the jungle, and you just chase down this AMC no matter where he is.
This is feeling kind of reminiscent of Game 1, though, from VGSGods, because they're just trying to solidify that early frontline factor. Bear in mind, it was Thor, Terra, Nike in Game 1. Now we're seeing Jorm, Guan, and Terra, so maybe even a little bit more dive potential, or at least a ton of peel potential between the Jormungandr and the Terra.
But then you see the Khepri locked in right away on the other side by Arial, and you think, well, how do they dive effectively again? I mean, like I said, this Guan Yu is going to be all over the AMC. You just toss Scarab's Blessing on him, run the opposite direction. AMC ends up living, and then the Guan Yu's out of position. I love what Arial Arise have done with this draft, and I don't think VGSGods have really done enough to change up their style from where they didn't find success in Game 1.
I'd like to see maybe a couple of heavy burst characters to kind of go hand in hand with some of this heavy peel that VGSGods have actually opted for. I think Habois has a little bit more value here. And not only that, but the big burst damage is going to be extremely relevant in terms of just having that kill potential to threaten more than one target at a time.
Yeah, I can agree with that for sure. Chang'e banned away this time by VGSGods, so we won't see that in the solo lane for Arial Arise alongside the Osiris. Exact same bans all the way across the board for AA, so they don't have to worry too much about these Scotty Soul sort of hunter picks that we could see in either mid or in the long lane. Arial Arise going to lock in the Amaterasu, another good team fighting solo laner. Doesn't quite heal you as much as the Chang'e, of course, but it's still a good team fighter.
And it still keeps that AoE presence, keeping...
Yeah, very true.
Like you've already mentioned, Game 1 was definitely a heavy focus from Arial Arise on that AoE damage aspect, and also just the space denial, really. And Dazzling Offensive going to accomplish much of the same. Khepri with the Scarab's Blessing can even accomplish a little bit of that space denial factor, because you can't really pressure with that Scarab's Blessing still being available. Xbalanque and Janus, though, this is... I'm not sold on these two picks. I need to see burst from VGSGods for this front line to really have much purpose. Man,
VGSGods really got to bounce back here if they want to stay on top of EU PS4. Arial Arise looked good. Let's throw it to John Finch and Anatoly for Game 2.
Thanks, Aggro. Totally, you know anybody who heals even better than maybe, say, like a Chang'e that you could add onto your team?
Ooh. Are they in this game, you think?
Yeah, I think I'm seeing her. Yeah.
Oh, it's the Terra, right?
Right, yeah. Terra Hill is notoriously brutal. Them 7 HP a tick. Yeah, Ollie this time is going to be piloting the healer, as it's going to be this hell into the long lane. Meanwhile, Distortion takes the Muzen Cobb into the middle lane this time. So a bit of a swap between those two, but I kind of like the idea of hell long lane.
So just like Distortion was playing the Zhong and not swapping the role, this time Ollie, not comfortable, I think, playing the Muzen Cobb this time around. Or maybe it's just as Distortion wasn't comfortable on the Hell, so they wanted to keep him on the Muzen Cobb in middle. Either way, though, this is a great way to get Hell accelerated. Long lane has the opportunity to control the most farm. A Hell that is the highest level with the most farm is going to get online so quickly. At that level 14 marker is where I'm looking at, close to 13 minutes, where Ollie is going to really pop off. So there needs to be a lot of early pressure from VGS in this long lane.
And that's exactly what they're doing. Hacky and Marky Sparky have already stripped away the red buff. Looks like they defend their own red buff as well. They put one on ClawLegend, one onto the Terra. But ClawLegend makes his way back to middle lane by giving up his beads, and he should be a-okay. Can we say the same for Drizzle, though, who's still battling up against Arial's aggression? VGSGods have stuck with 2 in the long lane, despite the fact that it's not being matched by Arial.
That's true. They're not able to strip away the purple buff, but that red buff was good enough. A very early beats from ClawLegend, so I want to definitely see Arial take advantage of that. Keep Pulsza hand in hand with SARPEII in the jungle. They were able to get those back camps. As a result, Drizzle was not able to steal it.
Amaterasu having a hard time here for Kana up against tier top 6 Jormungandr. To be fair, Amaterasu would struggle up against just about anyone at these early levels, especially someone who punishes you for being so close to the wave.
That's very true. It's difficult to handle a lot of magical damage dealers this early on without Amaterasu's heal on the aura quite yet being the highest of levels. Still needs a lot of blue buffs to be able to control that. A little fight in the scuffle over these left side mid camps.
Arial, though, going with the composition that I would say is pretty similar in terms of how they would want to be fighting. Like, they have still a really good team fight around a sort of sustained god with a good amount of control. The question is VGSGods made enough adjustments where they can handle it? They still have good rotations with this Janus, but now they have a sustained player of their own, tier toxic for a ton of disruption along with Hacky. But the question is, do they have enough burst?
I don't think they do, Finch. They definitely switched up their comp between games 1 and 2 by sacrificing the Thor to opt for the Jormungandr, but then they added a little bit extra healing with the Guan in that jungle role to pair up with the Terra, thinking like, oh, Chang'e was an issue, we'll ban away the Chang'e, we'll get some extra healers, but then now they have to deal with a hell all of a sudden. And then to throw in the Janus and the Xbalanque. This is good utility in team fights. Yeah. The mobility that you get, the confusion from Darkest of Nights. I just can't answer that question of if it's enough burst like you asked, because it's really not.
I agree. I think that they could potentially be in some trouble. They might need to play around the ultimate from ClawLegend and Marky Sparky really well together to catch Arial off guard. If they can remove Ollie early on, or even Pulsza, without either one of them being able to keep the other one alive, then that might be their best bet. But you factor in that's not a ton of burst, and it's into heal, and the ultimate, and ClawLegend is in trouble, but makes it to the portal.
Hacky yet again with the clutch timing of the shells. That was a good opportunity, knowing that ClawLegend still didn't really have the beats. I believe it just now came off of cooldown, and they missed their window. Arial Arise going to have to hold that one.
And they were trying to make that play without the ultimate available for what it's worth. ClawLegend used his anyway, but if Anvil of Dawn or Stinger are involved in that one, probably they're able to clean it up. So ClawLegend, fortunately, with that timing, makes it away.
Should still be able to farm quite comfortably in the mid lane as he hits level 5 before distortion on the Muzen comp. That's the beautiful thing about Janus. Even though you do lack a lot of like damage compared to other mages, you have that mobility to be able to squeeze in back camps, squeeze in the left mid camps from time to time, and that's why we're seeing this little bit of an experience gap between these two millionaires. Also, I think that Distortion is getting more split farm.
Yes.
Whereas ClawLegend getting some solos.
Yeah, I think Pulse has kind of been just lurking around. Remember, he didn't start in the long lane the way that Hacky did. So they're kind of trading those leads. That's what this meta is about, right? Distortion is going to be a bit behind ClawLegend, but that's because Ollie on this hell should be a bit ahead of Marky Sparky. I don't know how long he'll be able to maintain that. Xbalanque does have some potential to be a bit of a lane bully, but he should still be in a good spot.
And against the hell, I just don't see how you can be a lane bully. Like, all that poke damage is just going to go to waste. Like, one heal, and then it's like, well, you tried. Nice try, guy.
That's a good point. Xbalanque likes to whittle you down, doesn't he, like, over time, and Hell's pretty good into that.
And, like, are you going to really invest your Rising Jaguar to all in a hell when you also got to worry about SARPEII on the Thor to play cleanup crew. It's so risky and an awkward position to be in.
That's a nice two-man route into the abduct, and who else but SARPEII is here to follow up, but there could be trouble. Drizzle's able to find one kill of his own. Pulsza's ultimate finally comes out, but it's onto himself, and Ollie makes the rotation in to find ClawLegend as well. Drizzle drops his beads, he finds himself a double, but Ollie wants to keep up the chase.
This rotation has been so good thus far. Drizzle, he found
That's
two,
huge.
but he'll eventually fall at the end of the day, making it a 2-for-2. The World Serpent making this presence from that solo lane. Third one, not going to be invested under that tier 1 tower dive. A little bit too early. An important pick. Drizzle shutting down Distortion before the Transcendence stacks really become an issue. Going for the second one as well. Body blocking Pulsza from using that abduct under the tier 1 tower to ensure the double kill.
It is still pretty nice for Ollie that he is the one that found those kills. That's basically the core, the mid, jungle, and support that they were able to take down. The side lanes ended up surviving that one for VGSGods, which is a nice little win, even though Arial lost Distortion and Pulsza too, because they also took down ClawLegend and Hacky. And all the kills on Ollie, it comes up a win.
Meanwhile, Sparky not able to really do much on the left side of the map. That tier 1 tower still very healthy. You use Rising or use that Darkest of Nights to get the 2 assists, but not really too much of a factor now with some of the changes where you could still just continue to walk through it. You don't have to worry about that little stun and to counter it with a stutter step.
I wonder if Marky felt forced into this ninja tab by here early. We've seen it a little bit more since you're more likely to get the 1v1s nowadays when you're trying to look for pressure, but Tier Toxic is in trouble in the short lane, but SARPEII's cut off Kana, and that might have just been enough for Tier Toxic to survive with barely any HP. They were one auto away.
Tier Toxic was never worried, Finch. My man's was like, yeah, I'm just going to walk away casually with Warrior's Blessing stacked up. 15 protections was just enough that he needed. Doesn't even have Pythax piece for the health to be able to survive that one. I believe if Kana had his second ability available during that dazzling offensive, it would have been a guaranteed kill. And just goes to show how difficult it is to lock down solo laners, even with, what was it, 7 abilities used, but they needed 8 to kill him, Finch.
It's those thin margins, and that's the execution level, I think, with Thor there too, because that's gonna get a wall, but it cuts off Kana's auto damage, as Ollie is certainly dead to rights here now. 4 members rotating over to the left lane to shut down this hell early. A nice kill for ClawLegend.
There's a global pressure on both sides, so both of these quote-unquote hunters need to respect that factor.
Sure.
SARPEII on the Thor and ClawLegend on the Janus. Ollie a little bit getting ahead of himself there.
SARPEII takes, or not SARPEII, but rather Tier Toxic is a good bit of damage. It sets up for ClawLegend to get the kill on Distortion. He gets gobbled up. They even forced out the Stinger too before it ended up following. But Kana wants a return kill. Dazzling Offensive gets them Hacky, but Tier Toxic comes back in for more damage. That sets up for the follow from ClawLegend, but a good self-res keeps Pulsza standing, and Tier Toxic falls to Kana for a double.
And the presence of SARPEII getting blown up by that unstable vortex. This time Sparky will rotate from that left side to force everyone out. This could be a tier 1 tower with Sparky here, but not really too much mana for ClawLegend. He's going to have to disengage and relinquish the tier 1 tower. Good rotation coming from Marky.
Yeah, someone's got to tell ClawLegend that Janus doesn't have enough damage, because he sure doesn't seem to know. He's been hitting unstable vortexes left and right in that last fight, and I think he's a key part of why that doesn't go way worse for VGSGods. Just like in Game 1, though, they've kept this game close. Arial has been the more proactive team, but VGSGods has done a good job responding so far.
They really have, and everyone from Arial Arise grouping up a little bit too much, where that unstable vortex becomes more powerful with already a short cooldown that shoots the focus with Mage's Blessing, making it, I believe, from 10 seconds to 8 seconds now, as that tier 1 tower dive by Tier Toxic as well, opening up the door a little bit. Distortion fell very early with his second death, not even 10 minutes into the game at the time. No real AoE damage, and also the Thor ultimate was just off the mark again.
I wonder if SARPEII was forced into this by Drizzle. It sure looks like it, because he didn't really have a target. He came back towards the Guan Yu, but easily evaded They're pinging out Drizzle's location, but Tier Toxic is here too. I don't know if this is an even fight at all. Arial Arise recognize and fall back.
No, definitely not an even one. It's a 4-on-2. They're going to disengage on the right side. 2-level lead now from ClawLegend after that last team fight. Comfortably going to be stacking that Book of Thoth once it is fully evolved. 1,000 extra mana, 9% of that's going to be converted into magical power. Going to be a good look for ClawLegend, and that's why he opted for the Shoes of Focus. It's not just a cooldown reduction, it's also the mana.
You know, I'm a bit surprised that Ollie isn't following suit with ClawLegend and also getting something like a Book of Thoth, or just some stacking item over here in the long lane. Instead, it was Lotus, cooldown boots, and now it looks like he's working on some pen. He'll have a couple of options where he wants to go, maybe even a Divine Ruin, but just a bit surprised no stack.
A little bit, I would agree with you there, but if there's going to be team fights like this where Ollie is rotating to,
sure,
I don't really hate the Lotus Crown, and especially once he does get that Spear of Desolation, he'll be at 30% CDR.
Drizzle up onto the horse, Distortion the early target. He does have beads, but doesn't feel like he needs to use them yet. Holds on to that cooldown, but in comes the rest of the team. Distortion blown up through space and time, and Tier Toxic work together. And now he goes into his ultimate so he can reposition.
A little bit worried about that Solar Flare route as everyone from Arial was grouping up. His teammates were just disengaging, so now they got one kill, Finch, but not going to get an objective after the fact. It was actually 6 minutes into game 1 where Arial got that first goal. Fury VGS not comfortable going for their own quite yet.
Coming into this, I was worried that they weren't going to get enough out of ClawLegend on this Janus, and it's been anything but that. It's been the ClawLegend show so far here throughout the early game, when so often Januses can feel like they take a while to get relevant. And now Ollie's in trouble again. He wants this kill into Marky Sparky, but it's a bait. Hacky's here as well, and you're not getting your one-on-one that you want, but Ollie might still be able to find this kill anyway. In fact, he does get the kill and the beads for Marky Sparky. Futility. Oh no, the Xbalanque ends up falling.
Feels bad when you die to a Hell basic attack, Finch. As the beats should have been used way sooner to prevent the slow from that second ability, but that was a 1v2 that not only did Ollie survive from, but turned it right on his head, and that's the power of Hell. It was a great power in the solo lane way back when it was super popular, and now in the new solo lane of the long lane has made a resurgence.
ClawLegend's the only one nearby, but he won't make it even close to in time. Kana was level 14, had the Frenzy picked up, but that secures the objective, but now VGSGods want the Pyromancer. Arial Arise are on their way. I believe that was SARPEII that went up. He is now dunking down, and Pyromancer has been leashed. Arial Arise don't have to take this fight, but if they can isolate Drizzle, that could be a nice kill, but in comes through space and time.
SARPEII gonna get clipped by that ability. The damage over time from Distortion, too much for Drizzle to handle. Without that sustain option, with a 5-on-4 power play, Arial can go back to the objective they wanted.
And this is shades of game 1 yet again. VGSGods were hanging in there, but a nice play from Arial on the back of Ollie in the long lane gets them the Gold Fury, and now the Pyromancer. Suddenly, they're on top.
And the thing was, that was a good ultimate from ClawLegend, but no one else can really take those portals moving forward. Marky Sparky was on the left side of the map, and with only hitting SARPEII, it becomes less enticing to all-in commit there, when there's also the Hell sustain that you got to worry about, and not really seeing too many anti-healing options quite yet from VGS.
That's right. It feels like they prioritized it even less than they did into the Chang'e. And maybe that's because the plan was to try and sit on Ollie. They rotated over twice now. The first time successful, where they brought 4 over, but the second time, when it was just Hacky and Marky, they kind of got outplayed. So now things are looking rough.
It is looking rough, especially with like thinking of how are you going to kill this Hell? Like even if you do have anti-healing, let's say, like then you got to worry about Scarab's Blessing coming out of Pulsza.
Right.
It's not as though VGSGods has an execute to deal with that Scarab's Blessing, and that could have been a tactic that they utilized because the Khepri was picked right before the secondary ban phase, and they should have known that that would have been another thing that they opted for. It was a huge factor in game number 1. The positioning of Pulsza was very good. His Solar Flare roots were on point, forcing multiple defensive relics, but VGSGods didn't adapt to that. Instead, what they're doing with their relic selections is double Thorns.
That's right, as if they want to try and stop Distortion in particular. I don't know that he's been that big of an issue so far. It feels as if they're itemizing against the wrong carry as ClawLegend makes his way out of there, though it costs him his beads. Hacky in some trouble, does find a two-man stun, but it's SARPEII who's been biding his time, cuts off Hacky on the retreat, and the hammer finds the kill. Tier 1 tower goes down as well, but Tier Toxic not done yet.
Pulsza going to be the target, still sitting with that Scarab's Blessing as Ollie's thinking about rotating on the left side. Will slow out Toxic for a moment. The portal going to zone away Ollie from making that dive happen. Too low is VGS to defend their own Tier 2 tower.
I think you're right, and now that Ollie's rotated in like the cavalry of old, Hayes come in to give him a little bit of extra healing, and they can keep this push going. That's the Tier 2 tower down, red buff successfully invaded, and the pick onto Hacky. Arial Arise are playing really well here today.
The most important tower went down, Finch. The middle tower. A lot of map control now for Arial Arise, and they're already using it.
Tier Toxic can't even make it into the ultimate. Too much burst from Distortion and Ollie alike. Drizzle does find himself a two-man stun. An Unstable Vortex is huge follow-up to bring SARPEII low, but I don't think Drizzle can get this kill by himself. I don't even know if he should have walked in. That cost him his beads already. And now another stun as Ollie finds the kill. Drizzle gifted one away.
Like lambs to the slaughter, one by one, they all fall down. A 2-for-0 as there was no shelter for VGSGods to retreat under once their Tier 2 tower was stripped away. The power damage spikes from Arial Arise are really starting to show, Finch. Ollie at level 16, not the top of the player damage charts, but you can certainly feel it when he does start casting those abilities.
Yes, all of a sudden everyone's taking a bunch of damage. That's Ollie that's getting that done for him. You had me sold on the Spirit Desolation, but it looks like Divine Ruin's the route he's gone, so it's actually Arial Arise who've prioritized more anti-healing than VGSGods to further minimize Drizzle's impact.
Also the Brawler Speed Stick from Distortion. So I love the pairing already from Arial Arise, and we're going to need to see VGSGods adapt sooner rather than later. I'm just not really seeing it. I believe Divine Ruin from ClawLegend is starting to be built, but
let's hope.
It's not the easiest to apply those stacks on a Janus, right? Like you would much rather have at least, let's say, a Pestilence from Tier Toxic, maybe Pestilence for Drizzle once they're going into that melee range, but this Double Thorns still has me questioning as to, why they did it in the first place against an Muzen comp that's an ability-based hunter.
I'm also curious about the decision. As I said, I thought maybe it was around this early focus on the Hell, but that hasn't materialized, so they might perhaps just be stuck with that decision as Tier Toxic has his ultimate forced out by Kana's dazzling offensive.
Gold Fury, or rather Primal Fury, is available on the left side. Without Tier Toxic's ultimate, I'm sure Ariel must feel confident to at least pull this, utilizing Ollie's sustain, maybe try to bait VGS in a bad spot. I think it's more about baiting out ClawLegend's ultimate. Once they can get that through space and time unavailable, the rest of the map is really their oyster. They don't have to worry about the aggression, the disengage on top of it, and no interest was VGSGods in defending this one.
And they had the right call, I think. They're down 7k gold here at this point, and like you said, Tier Toxic ultimate already been used. They don't have many options for defending. Closer to 8k gold, really, 8,400 experience. And you can see it happened basically all at once. Look how even those graphs were. And I'm thinking that was all around that Gold Fury into the Pyromancer fight, and they were able to get so much off the back of that.
Yeah, once those towers started crumbling, so did the rest of VGS. You lose your mid lane, you lose the game. That's what it feels like in competitive SMITE. It's so important to hold on to that one positioning of the map, and already with another objective, Arial Arise are just kind of crossing off the checklist before they start off the Fire Giant. I don't think they're started until like maybe another 2 minutes and maybe get another pick.
See what it is they choose to play around. Heartward comes out for Pulsza. I feel like we don't see this item built as much nowadays. Gauntlet can do a lot of the similar stuff, but it's been picked up in response, I imagine, to all this magic damage from Tier Toxic and ClawLegend to try and cut some of that out.
It's also 20 MP5 aura, which is, I believe, overlooked in most cases.
It helps when you have a Hell. Yeah.
Ollie on the Hell does have MP5 for herself in the light stance, but she can now stay in dark stance almost permanently as long as she's beside Pulsza, receiving the Khepri passive, receiving the Gauntlet of Thebes passive now as the Hardware Amulet MP5. I'm sure Ollie is going to be having a great time in these team fights.
Well, despite the overwhelming commitment to Thorns, we're still seeing crit from Distortion. It looks like Fail Not has been picked up, so maybe giving them some Thorns value later on, as Fire Giant should go down for free. really no way that VGSGods can contest this. And there's not much on the left side of the map for them to grab either. That's where Marky is along with Drizzle.
The only way they can really get value, I believe, from these double Thorns is if Drizzle and Tier Toxic all in commit to Ollie and force a turnaround play where they're both getting hit from one ability to maximize those double relics. But then you also have an Aegis from Ollie, the Scarab's Blessing from Pulsza. It just feels too forced, too aggressive from VGS.
Arial grab the tier 2 tower and right and take that opportunity to back. VGSGods were considering, I think, trading that tier 2 out for the one in the long lane, but they couldn't make it there in time. They had to back to defend, and now they end up getting nothing off the back of it. And Arial can instead spend all this extra gold they just made and have plenty of time to push these Phoenixes. I mean, I know the gods are different, but this feels almost like a replay of Game 1, just based on how the momentum has moved throughout the match.
It definitely feels that way. And as I'm looking at the two differences of Goldfinch, I always think of like, all right, is this lead that big of a lead really? And then I look at the time of the game at 21 minutes, I'd say absolutely is. This 12,000 gold, all of a sudden now you have like a fully completed like 2,000 to 2,200 gold item per player to be able to siege these Phoenixes. No more towers remaining for VGSGods, and they weren't interested in defending the towers, and you have to be able to try to defend the Phoenixes. I just don't see a logistical way to do it unless ClawLegend hits like the ulti of time.
He's going to need it to be a sick one. Hacky does have the upgraded Cursed Ankh. Perhaps it could have happened around that cooldown as well if they can catch Ollie and a good chunk of Arial in it and punish them for healing around this hell.
And you have to sacrifice a lot to be able to get that Cursed Ankh. He only has 3 items deep. Now thinking about how to defend Drizzle, forced to use the beats just to get away.
Into the backline goes Tier Toxic to try and turn this fight around. Through Station Time does bring Distortion and Pulsza quite low. As SARPEII comes in, that sets up for Kana to get Toxic back near the front line. Drizzle's quite low as well, but he goes into the ultimate, and he wants to try and find 2 stuns. He does on the Pulsza, who uses the ultimate on himself to keep him alive, but Ollie finds Marky Sparky. Kana gets Hacky, and suddenly a surrender vote coming out from VGS. I think they recognize this just might be the end. Left side Phoenix falls, and Arial gonna push into the Titan room.
Arial Arise so disciplined in that last team fight, forcing it outside of the Phoenix and kind of using VGS's weight against themselves as they took the bait.
Pulsza has now fallen. Titan at half HP. Arial just need to focus this Titan to take the game down. VGSGods couldn't quite hold on, and Arial in 2-0 fashion take down VGS.
A very dominating game yet again.
Yeah.
Whether it was the Chang'e in game 1 or the Hell in game number 2, the theme of the game definitely came down to sustain and a little bit of global pressure this game. It was the Janus versus the Thor. SARPEII not really utilizing the Thor thing to its fullest potential, but the healing was a big factor.
It absolutely was. A couple of things come to my mind. VGSGods' itemization, I don't think was correct this game. They did not do enough to slow down Ollie. That play he makes with the 2v1 in the long lane 2 that sets up for Gold and Pyromancer might have just been the play of the game. They did so much off the back of that.
Especially once they stripped away the tier 2 middle tower, the way they were able to re-engage into a team fight and collapse, get 2 free kills after the fact. There was not much it felt that VGS can do to stop the aggression.
That's right. That momentum got away from them in a hurry, especially when that Guan you fell behind. He wasn't nearly as much good when he was down in experience, but that will do it. Congratulations there on that win, but we got plenty more console coming your way. We'll be right back.